And welcome into Rob Schmitt Tonight. I'm Bob Brooks filling in. Rob has the night off, everyone. And I want to say happy President's Day, everybody. We use this day to celebrate the men who have led our country. We thank them, and especially our current president, President Trump, who not only had to overcome the outright lies and slander from the left, he also had to waste his time in courts fighting off multiple political prosecutions. And to top it all off, faced with 2 assassination attempts. But I truly believe this. He saved us from a very dark alternative, and that is President Kamala Harris. She popped up here in New York City recently to speak to the cast of Broadway's A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical, and in a very classic Kamala word salad type of way, she had this to say.
For those rights to be maintained, which means we have to be vigilant, and it's just the nature of it. It doesn't mean we don't see the beauty in everything, right? These things all coexist. But I believe we fight for something, not against something.
So, again, I say thank you, President Trump, for the sacrifice you are making and not giving up on us. But to my main point tonight, let me tell you what I think we're all getting tired of, sick and tired of, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere, unfortunately, and that is the left-wing media's continued effort to paint our president and the entire MAGA movement as Nazis. I mean, it's nothing new, but I'm going to sound like a liberal here and say, I'm getting a little bit offended. These headlines are from back in 2016, calling Trump Hitler, referring to his supporters as Nazis. And now the talking point is being recycled because the Democrats are demoralized and all they have left is to compare their opponents to one of the worst regimes in human history. But it's going further this time. They are clinging to that bogus propaganda point to scare Americans, with the ultimate goal now appearing to be stripping us of our First Amendment rights. I can't believe I'm having to say this. They're using this Nazi false comparison to censor Americans for what they say is the good of the people. We are seeing it in full force, marking the most extreme hypotheticals about the MAGA movement. It's dangerous, everybody, and frankly, I think it's sick. And it's not isolated to the liberal extremes on dark corners of the internet either. It's happening on major news programs now. You may have seen this by now. In an interview with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, CBS News anchor Margaret Brennan tried to blame free speech, something the Trump administration is trying to champion, as the cause to the Holocaust.
He was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide.
Okay, she was referring to Vice President Vance's speech in Munich, talking about the threat of free speech that it is facing in places like Germany. But here was Rubio's response.
Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. The point of his speech was basically that there is an erosion in free speech and intolerance for opposing points of view within Europe, and that's of concern. That's an erosion of the actual values that bind us together in this transatlantic union that everybody talks about.
So again, in Germany, Vance was outlining his concern over this in numerous countries in Europe. It's happening all over the place.
I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief.
Okay, and everything he said is actually happening. 60 Minutes, they did a piece about it yesterday. In Germany, they are arresting people for posts made online. And the posts aren't about killing people or threatening some type of mass crime. they're arresting people who don't align with the ideological viewpoints of who is in charge of their government right now, everybody. And that is scary.
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher if you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you're in the internet, if I insult you or a politician,
That sticks around forever.
I mean, insulting is a crime. I mean, according to who? That guy? As the Secretary of State said, it was censorship of free speech in Nazi Germany, a behavior like what our vice president was calling out that led to the heinous events that unfolded during World War II. Hitler and company made it so it was a one-party state. Watch a documentary on it. And yet their answer, and the ones our legacy media is pushing, is put limits on our free speech.
The criticism that, this feels like the surveillance that Germany conducted 80 years ago. How do you respond to that?
There is no surveillance. Free speech needs boundaries. Without boundaries, a very small group of people can rely on endless freedom to say anything that they want, while everyone else is scared and intimidated.
Free speech has boundaries. Did you just hear that coming out of Germany? The Nazis eliminated anyone in their way, including those within their movement who may have just had the appearance of stepping out of line. That's how authoritarian government works. Prosecution of political enemies, not much unlike the recent legal warfare we've seen here. Biden's DOJ, two district DAs, Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis, New York State Attorney General Letitia James, all tried to imprison our current president. Don't get me started on the unconstitutional impeachments he had to face during his first term. All kinds of investigations into him, his allies, Russia, the Steele dossier, plus the 2 attempts on his life. You all know what happened. Also, I want to point out that Democrats have proven they will go after their own if they step out of line, much like what they did in Nazi Germany. Look at what they did to the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. He spoke out about the migrant crisis, that Biden and Harris and whoever was really running things and enabled it, and all of a sudden he's charged with corruption. So the louder the Democrats scream about Republicans being Nazis, the harder they are working to distract the American people from their own behavior, which, tell you what, everybody, kind of looks pretty suspect to me. But the fact we're even talking about this, that Margaret Brennan and plenty of other liberal journalists keep bringing this up, I think is the real issue. Remember that they are trying to spin when Trump held the rally at Madison Square Garden. Do you remember this, what they were trying to do here? It was part of this broadcast on MSNBC. Take a look at this.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally.
The liberal media is fixated on painting the Republican Party as Nazis because they have nowhere else to turn other than, like I said, the most extreme hypothetical examples that they can possibly come up with.
He is not only unfit, he is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
Like Trump, Hitler was also viewed as a clown, a goon who could be kept in line.
He's deliberately inviting the criticism that he is behaving like a Hitler or Mussolini-style fascist.
They did it before the election. They're still doing it now. In fact, Senator Cory Booker did it again today. He posted a tweet whining about Doge and added this picture to it. A person standing in front of a bunch of Tesla Cybertrucks. You know what that picture looks pretty similar to? It looks like this one. The famous Tiananmen Square picture of a protester standing in front of actual tanks. The only difference is 200 people were murdered by the Chinese Communist Party when that happened. Doge is doing an audit to look for government waste. Like I said, Democrats always make up some extreme hypothetical to freak people out, but now they are going after free speech. Blame the freedom of speech in the First Amendment for why the Holocaust happened and make it look like the GOP and the MAGA movement is somehow related. because that was Brennan's real goal. Tie the current GOP MAGA to Nazis. And I think it's a very dangerous game that they're playing.
You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.